put together by the local community and meant for the local community, and it's being intentionally done on a day different than the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation, just so there isn't any conflict with, and the attention on that day can be with the Songhees' event at the powwow. So thank you. Just want to express my appreciation both to the Songhees for their event and also to the Reconciliation Group, which is an informal gathering of people dedicated to reconciliation. Reconciliation Oak Bay. I also had the opportunity to attend the Provincial Law Enforcement Memorial Service for those who die across the province each year in a public service that's held at the legislature. That's a provincial-wide event, but I just want to acknowledge that Oak Bay Police were quite involved in the organizing and managing of that event as we actively support at that. This weekend coming up, Thanksgiving weekend, we'll see the return of the 45th anniversary of the Victoria Marathon. Just a reminder, there will be road closures, and as started a couple of years ago, there were road closures on both the Saturday and the Sunday, the 11th and the 12th. So if people are making plans, you can find details of the road closures at the runvictoriamarathon.com website. Last week, we also saw the start of the official community plan, or OCP, consultation with 2 open houses, a webinar, and an online survey. The webinar is available if people wish to watch it. You can stream and replay it online. The survey remains open for input. I just want to note the OCP will shape the community for decades to come. The public feedback is incredibly critical for informing any potential changes. So I just want to encourage every resident of Oak Bay to review the information and provide your feedback. Tell your neighbors, tell your friends. We do want your input. And you can find the survey at the connect.oakbay.ca website. I just also want to acknowledge that the OCP can be emotionally charged. We're not just talking about housing, obviously. We're talking about people's homes and their businesses, their livelihood. And I appreciate that even potential change can seem often threatening or anxiety-inducing, and I certainly saw that at some of the open house pieces. So I just want to reflect that, acknowledge it. I do want to assure you that Council respects your input on this, and your feedback will help guide our decision-making. I also just need to ask, or want to ask, that all members of the public treat staff, external consultants, and council members in a non-threatening way. The interactions so far have been overwhelmingly appropriate, so I just want to thank you for that. But we've had 1 or 2 incidents of behavior that could be seen as threatening, and I just want to ask that everybody keep our conversations respectful. So that's going on, and I just want to thank you for what's happened so far, but also thank you in advance for future communications. Looking outside of Oak Bay for a moment, I just wanted to raise for people's awareness under CRD business this week. There's been a number of board priorities at the Capital Regional District. The last major item of priorities there has been consideration of how to support regionally significant performance spaces. For those of you who aren't aware, Victoria, Saanich, and Oak Bay own the Royal Theatre. City of Victoria owns McPherson Theatre, both of which are managed through the Capital Regional District on a year-to-year basis, but with no ability to do any meaningful regional planning. And so there's a consideration of a new service that would look at regional performing arts facilities in the region, both those 2 theatres, engagement with the Mary Winspear Theatre on the peninsula, and consideration of potential future performing arts spaces, such as in the West Shore or downtown, that might meet expanding needs. So that's a pretty substantial piece of discussion. Decisions won't be made on Wednesday, but a decision will be made whether or not to advance it in its current proposed form or perhaps with some changes. So I think it's a pretty exciting time for the region that may have some better support. I think certainly as one of the owners and funders of the Royal, certainly the opportunity for the broader region to contribute to that service is a positive thing. Last, but certainly not least, towards the end of this week, the district's new Chief Administrative Officer, Michelle Hunt, will be starting. I just want to take this opportunity to thank our interim CAO, Ruth Malley, for all her work over the last number of weeks. She's really, in her time here, she's, it's easy to be an interim and take it easy. She's really worked very, very hard on behalf of the district and on council and for staff to ensure that the priorities and operations have progressed effectively. And she's not in the room at the moment, but on behalf of all of council, I just want to express my appreciation to Ms. Malley for all of her work supporting Oak Bay, and also to our staff who have been equally energetic in working alongside her. So looking forward to our new CAO, but also just want to thank Ruth for all of her time here. Those are all my comments for tonight. With that, I'm happy to go to the next part of the agenda package, which is the public comment and question period. This is an opportunity for members of the public to talk to council about items that are not on the agenda this evening. And we have some restrictions related to land use, but really we have some time set aside every meeting for people who wish to talk to council about issues of interest to the community that may or may not be on the agenda, but may wish to see some public discussion. So I'm going to open it up both online. If you are online, you can use the Zoom app to raise your hand and I'll go to you. And if you're in the meeting room here, you can come forward. You can demonstrate the process. This is perfect. Thank you for coming forward. Just have a seat at the microphone. Just if you push the button in the middle, you can state your name and municipality of residence, and then you have up to 3 minutes to talk to council. And you can ask questions or just make comments.
Okay, thank you very much. Good evening, my name is Evan Brown and I'm a longtime resident of Oak Bay. I've always admired the community for its beauty, especially our incredible tree canopy. But I'm beginning to notice some new residential developments changing this aspect of Oak Bay, specifically in the Uplands neighborhood. And I'm becoming increasingly concerned with the loss of trees across our neighborhood, and I felt like now was potentially the time to speak up. So last week I launched a petition to gauge if other residents felt the same way. In just 7 days, with very little outreach, the petition has gathered over 340 signatures, a copy of which I have here. Many who signed this petition also left messages and comments. And when I read through their comments and their concerns, a common thread emerged. Residents expressed frustration that developers' interests seem to outweigh community values. These comments highlighted what I believe many of us feel, that progress and preservation are not opposites. We can grow responsibly and protect the natural beauty that defines Oak Bay. So my message tonight to council is, please know that the community does support you, and if you're feeling pressured to rush density requirements, know that we support you in taking a thoughtful and balanced approach. Oak Bay, can and should evolve, but not at the expense of the natural landscape that defines us. Please don't be afraid to say no when a developer compromises the beauty and integrity of this place we call home. I've left a copy of the petition here, and I'm happy to leave it with council to look at. And as always, I'm always happy to connect further on this matter. Thank you for your time, and thank you for protecting the heart of Oak Bay.
Thank you very much, Ms. Brown. I might just ask if you can just hand it to our corporate officer here, Ms. Anderson. Thank you. And that will get, if it's a single copy, it'll get copied and circulated, scanned and circulated to council. Thank you very much for coming tonight. And it's a great example of how to do the presentation. Anybody else wish to speak to council? Are you leaving? Have a good night. Anybody else wish to come and take the opportunity to speak to council this evening? I don't see anybody online either, so last call before we move on to other agenda items on the evening tonight. Yeah, you can come forward. Things that are not on the agenda tonight, correct.
So the point about housing and gentrification, is that part of the agenda?
No, there's nothing. So, no, tonight there's so. The question was just whether. Yeah, anyway, I'll let you speak, and if you go sideways, I'll gently I'll let you know. No worries. So if you could just turn on your microphone, just state your name and municipality of record for the residence for the record. You don't have to give your address, just the municipality, and you have up to 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Jacqueline Chung, and I'm a resident of South Oak Bay. We moved to South Oak Bay approximately 4 years ago, so I would say I'm one of the newer residents. We've moved several places within Victoria. We moved over from Vancouver 8 years ago with a baby in tow, and we decided to settle in Oak Bay due to the livability and suitability for our young family. I have a 4-year-old and an 8-year-old now. And our primary decision-making process in terms of settling in Oak Bay wasn't the market value of the house. That definitely was a barrier. So I understand and appreciate some families suffering through affordability issues. But we decided to settle in South Oak Bay due to the safe and quiet neighborhood. My youngins, they dash across the street. And so my number one priority is road safety. And just from my perspective as a citizen living in South Oak Bay, we're seeing an increased trend of traffic due to the new developments, particularly the triplex, the fourplexes, and then now understanding the pre-zoning capabilities, multi-story apartments. And I actually support housing densification, but the approach needs to be balanced and well thought out and holistic. Holistic in the manner of not just looking at meeting the housing target, but also looking at the other community values, heritage, safety, security, the spirit of the community. Those are also intrinsic values that need to be considered. And in my opinion, based on what I've seen, I'm only seeing the one-dimensional meeting the housing target. So I'm encouraging council and also other residents to really push and pressure and question and use critical thinking and sensible approach to planning our community in the long run. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Chung. It's a great plug for just again, my call, please participate in the OCP survey, because that direction of the longer term, where we want to go, is the important question as part of that. So thank you. Anybody else wish to speak to council? I don't see any other hands popping up, so I'm going to, there's just lots of people in the room, so often we have that many people, there's a couple of people who wish to speak, so. All right, I'm going to move on then to the next item on the agenda, which is Upland Siting and Design for 3470 Upper Terrace Road. We have, oh no, Mr. Hadfield's not here, Mr. Boole, welcome. Mr. Boole is, for those online, is our Director of Community Building and Planning. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. A short introduction on this Upland Siting and Design application. It's located at 3470 Upper Terrace. It's for exterior renovations that include 2 new covered entrances, a skylight, replacing all the windows, replacing the roof, and changing a garage door to a standard entry door. The application has been reviewed by the Advisory Design Panel, which recommends that this application be approved. The development does not require the removal of any trees and is in front of you for your consideration. Thank you.
I apologize, I missed the mic button. Is the applicant here as well tonight? No, I'm not sure if they are, but okay, we will come back to this tape, maybe on, online,
Sorry,
I see.
they're on by video. If that's
Right,
okay.
I see it there,
Sorry,
okay.
by Zoom, I meant to say.
Yeah, no, perfect, I see you there, thank you. All right, so we have with us the report. Are there any questions from members of council or the applicant? Can I get a motion to receive the report? Moved and seconded, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed?
I'll move that the Upland Siting and Design application ADP 00193 be to allow exterior renovations to the existing single-family dwelling on the property at 3470 Upper Terrace Road be approved.
Moved and seconded. I think this one is straightforward. So if anybody's going to speak against it, I'd appreciate any comments. Not seeing any. This is a very modest exterior changes and thoughtfully done with the applicant. So thank you for that. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Move to item number 5.2, which is the zoning amendment for real estate offices. Mr. Boole, are you on the hook here again with the welcome?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, Mr. Green couldn't be here tonight, so I'm covering the reports today. Let me see. In July, Council asked for a report back and then bylaw amendment to treat real estate offices like financial institution uses in the zoning bylaw. Our zoning bylaw on Oak Bay Avenue has a zoning that specifies uses between 3 levels, the street level, above street level and below street level. And the proposed bylaw, as requested, makes arrangements to require real estate offices to be below or above the street level, if it were approved. The report gives some further background. There's currently 3 real estate offices in the area that would be affected by this bylaw. In the short run, nothing would change as the bylaw would be amended because they would become non-conforming uses that are allowed to continue until the use is interrupted for at least 6 months. In terms of the consideration for the bylaw, staff have provided some commentary. Currently, retail uses are already prioritized to some extent in the bylaw because of the way we have distinguished the 3 different zones. And there may be other reasons as well why council is seeking this change right now. So with the current bylaw, there is a couple of implications. As I mentioned, the 3 real estate offices would become legally non-conforming. There's still an overlap with some other service business uses that may be considered similar, or maybe they're different, but they remain allowed at the street level. It's important to articulate the reasons for this change. There's also an upcoming project likely to start next year, village area planning project, where we could take a deeper dive and look at all the uses involved. But I understand council's interest in an interim measure as referenced in the motion. So we have a couple of options for you for council. The main option on the first page refers to this village area plan process. That would be an option where all uses can be considered comprehensively. But in the meantime, there's also options in option number 2 and option number 3 to proceed with the current bylaw in front of you. One option is to specifically notify the properties involved, and or a public hearing could be held. It's not required, I believe, but those are 3 options are equally available to you for council. So with that, I'll end my introduction, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bull. We typically here have, if there's public input, we get to that, but this item does not. We will just go for questions from council and then have a motion, and then we'll debate the motion. Go ahead, Councillor Braithwaite. I see your hand up.
Thanks so much, Mayor. And I brought this motion forward originally because there is a lot of angst in the community right now in regards to street-level commercial spaces. So this bylaw isn't about real estate as a profession. It's about ensuring that there is a limited number of street-level commercial spaces, and that's reserved for like
Councillor
active.
Braithwaite, can I ask you just to limit to questions at this time?
I'm getting to my question.
Okay, perfect.
I just wanted to ask to help. So this is basically, this bylaw would help clarify the specific land use issue, and that's primarily about maintaining active street level retail frontages in the village core. Is that correct?
Mr. Bull?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I think the change in the bylaw contributes to that. This change in the bylaw specifically to make sure that the requested direction is implemented by grouping real estate offices with financial institution uses to the above street level or below street level. Thank you.
Thank you. And just to confirm, can you maybe touch upon how this proposed restriction that we're speaking about tonight would align with our treatment of financial institutions, which are already limited to upper or lower stories?
Mr. Bull?
Yeah, thank you for the Mayor. It would put that on par with the financial institution use, so it would get exactly the same arrangements. Thank you.
Thank you. And then the other question I had was, in the report it talked about possibly waiting for the village area plan, but really, how long would it realistically take for the village area plan to produce the updated land use definitions? And would there be any assurance that this specific issue would be addressed early in that process?
Mr. Bull?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Through you, that is at this point to be seen. The village area plan project needs to be scoped first with council. We do anticipate, because it has been scheduled for a while, to start after the OCP and zoning bylaw changes have been made. But exactly what we do first in that process has to be determined still. So in terms of timelines, it would be a while still, I think, before that review would be completed and bylaws would be amended. But I can't quite put a timeline to that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And my last question, before I hand it over to others to ask, is, it was right here in front of me. If does the bylaw that we currently have in place for financial institutions, does it have the 6-month requirement in it, just like is being proposed for this particular bylaw?
Mr. Bull?
Thank you for the mayor. Yes, the same mechanism would apply. So it's not in the bylaw somewhere, but it's part of the Local Government Act. So this is how the provincial regulation deals with non-conforming uses, and that would extend to the financial institutions. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I don't have any other hands for questions. Oh, go ahead, Councillor Smart.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, to staff, I was wondering if council tonight does decide to go ahead with option 2 to do something on a tighter time frame, could we also potentially approve option 1 to still follow up with reviewing the service business use later on in the does staff see option 1 and 2 as additive, or would they want option 2 to potentially have an amendment? I just wanted some advice procedurally. Thank you.
Thank you. I might be able to answer that question, which is that we haven't defined the scope of the village area plan yet, and my anticipation would be that all of that would be included in the village area planning process. This is very, very narrow. Go ahead, Cal.
And thank you for that clarification. And through you, Mayor, then I guess could you further clarify then that should a tighter timeline be desired and option 2 be put on the table, we wouldn't need to pass option 1 because it would automatically come up in the process? Am I understanding you correctly? Thank you.
Sure. That would be my read of it, but I'll turn to Mr. Bull to see if he agrees. I mean, I think because that project hasn't been defined yet by council, it would be up to us to whether or not to include it, but if it's helpful to have a motion as one of the pieces for it, I'll ask Mr. Bull his opinion.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Through you. With option 1, you give staff some information about what you'd like to be included in the village area plan. If it weren't for that, well, it's clearly on our radar as well, but it doesn't hurt to have that intent clearly specified by council so we can follow up with it later. Thank you.
All right. So then procedurally, I would suggest that if you wish to advance that in that way so it's more clear, we would deal with an option 2 or option 3 if that was the will of council, and then have a motion arising for the other as being a slightly secondary piece of it. Other questions? Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you to Director Bull. Could you confirm that this is an extra piece of work that was not anticipated prior to the village plan? Will it in any way set back any other work that staff are doing or cause delays?
Mr. Bull? It may just be for clarification, are you asking, like, there's 3 different options there, so I want to make sure maybe you can address all 3 of those options.
Yeah,
Mr.
if we
Bull.
were to proceed immediately with this.
Please go ahead.
Thank you for the mayor. We have always a little bit of capacity to respond to council direction, and this is part of that reserved time. So depending on the option, giving notice, and if a public hearing were selected, that does require some effort. And like with other action items from council direction, we would schedule that as we have time available. So right now we are busy with the official community plan project particularly, but we'll probably we'll be able to, whatever council's direction is, to keep the follow-up on this item proceeding. Thanks.
Thank you. I do note that the bylaw is written here, so that work is completed. It should be just the consultation and process. Thank you. I don't see other hands, so as the mover of the original motion, we already had motion to receive, so. Oh, did we? No, I didn't, sorry. Move receipt, is there a seconder? Thank you. All those in favor of receipt of the report? Any opposed? Not opposed.
And would you like me to read out the option in its entirety, or just?
I think you can just name 1, 2, or 3 that you're going to suggest.
I would like to move option number 2, please.
Option number 2, thank you. Move seconded, thank you. Over to you to motivate.
Thanks very much. And I do believe that there is some speediness needed for this particular motion. It's a protective measure, and it would hold the line on street-level retail until the broader planning work could be done. So I believe we should adopt this as an amendment as an interim step with a commitment to revisit it through the village area plan review rather than risk inaction in the short term. As I said before, the bylaw isn't about real estate as a profession. But I do believe that the presence of real estate offices at street level does affect the vitality, pedestrian experience, and the retail mix of our village. And I know that the BIA, our Business Improvement Association, feels the same way. Speaking of which, he just walked in the room, the president, Martin. And so I would really like to see council support this and move this forward as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So just for clarification, if anybody not with an agenda in front of them, basically this would be give notices to the businesses and owners affected, and then bring it back for first, second, and third reading after that notification is complete. Go ahead, Councillor Smart.
Thank you. I just wanted to speak in favor of option 2, and I appreciate that it's been brought forward to council to consider. And I did just want to say that I will be interested to bring forward a motion arising just to clarify that option 1 is included as a further follow-up, because I do believe that looking at the service business use category is an important piece of work that shouldn't get lost. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Seeing any? I'll speak very briefly because I'm speaking in support. I think this is helpful. I think that our retail frontage is very limited in the district, and in past times we've enacted the same bylaw for financial institutions. It doesn't affect current users. It allows everything to continue as is, but gives us a bit of time to make sure that our retail is used for future retail changes are in the intervening time are met appropriately. So I'm appreciative of this coming forward, and I think the path given here of notifying and having the conversation directly with the affected parties, although it doesn't actually change anything for them, is a helpful process to go through, as opposed to going through a more lengthy public hearing, et cetera, type process. Go ahead, Councillor Green.
Thank you very much. I'll speak very briefly to the motion. I will be supporting it, obviously, and one of the reasons that I'm supporting it is that this sustains and encourages local economies in small village centers, which is critical in Oak Bay. The Oak Bay Village relies heavily on pedestrian shopping traffic. The small businesses rely heavily on them, and tourism and all of the other things that these local economies support. So that's why I'm supporting the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Patterson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I too will support the motion because I believe the intent of the motion is valid and responds certainly to the merchants that are in the business improvement area. I just caution that we do need to have communication certainly with with all of the owners and any tenants involved, because I know certainly in the instance of, say, the new development on Central and St. Patrick, we went back and modified the uses on 2 occasions simply because of difficulty in achieving tenants for lease space, and in fact keeping the frontage with any operation in front of it. So that is my only caveat to that. I support it going forward, but it's important that we do communicate with all parties and certainly consider that in the village plan.
Thank you. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? None opposed, so that carries. Thank you. And Councillor Smart, you wish to refer the option 1 to ensure that those options are included in the village plan. Is that correct?
Yes, thank you. I would like to move option 1 just to solidify that in the planning scope for the village area planning.
So basically to direct staff to include, and then we'll strike the service business use category, but exploring updated definitions related to retail, office, personal service, etc., to the village planning process.
Correct. I'm not sure why you would have to strike service business use, but essentially, yes.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay. So the motion here is just to refer this to the village planning process to make sure we include all those pieces. Is that understood by staff? We're good. Is there a seconder? Moved and seconded. Don't know if it needs debate, but I'll allow some if there is any. Go ahead, Councillor
Just a
Braithwaite.
clarifying question. This won't hold up the intent of going with option number 2, will it?
That's my understanding, but Mr. Bowles, just to confirm.
Thank you, Mayor. No, it wouldn't hold that up. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor? Any opposed? Not opposed, that carries. Thank you. We move then to item 5.3, which is on the amended agenda. This probably needs a bit of explanation for those in the room, and I did have a chance just to let council know that this would happen. So one of the very few powers that exist in the mayor's chair is the power of reconsideration. I can bring back motions within 30 days. I'm doing so tonight really just to address a procedural error that happened at the September 15th meeting. At that meeting, there was the following motion was live, that the draft of official community plan and zoning bylaw recommendations be endorsed as presented for community engagement. That's the motion that's that with this notice of reconsideration is back on the floor. But just to understand why this reconsideration is being made. So on September 15th, there was a procedural motion made to end further debate on the topic. So basically a motion to call the question, which is essentially, if passed, ends debate and we move on to the decision. That motion passed, the motion to call the question, and so we voted on the main motion. That's what's up for reconsideration tonight. The reason that we're here tonight is that I made a mistake. So when the question was called on the procedural motion, I miscounted the hands. I missed a hand, so I thought 2 voted in support, not 3. With 3 in opposition, it needs a 2/3 majority. It failed. So if I had correctly seen those hands, the debate would have been allowed to continue. I've already apologized in writing, but I'll apologize to both council and the public for that error. Now, that motion resulted in the OCP consultation that's currently underway. So the motion, which is up for debate now, has effectively been enacted. As the consultation is underway, our role for the next few weeks is now to receive the feedback from the public. So not to debate the merits of the options. All those options are with the community now for consideration and for feedback. The opportunity to discuss the merits or potential changes regarding those options is available. It's available to the public right now. It'll be available to council when it comes back. All that feedback, all the options will be coming back to this table, and there's been further opportunity for discussion. So tonight I'm just asking, keep comments reasonably brief. There was 3 people that indicated they wish to continue debate, so I'm going to allow those at the top of my speaking list. Ideally, we're going to keep those reasonably confined to the ideas that that they were going to say that night and speak to. And again, we will have ample opportunity to discuss the details when it returns to this table. So recognizing the 3 councillors that indicated they wished more time for discussion on the 15th, they'll be at the top of the speaking order. So that's Councillors Braithwaite, Green, and Patterson. Happy to, in any order, take any additional comments. I will call the question at the end of this. It effectively reinstates the original decision. I'm going to ask people to kind of vote the way they did, and we'll just move it forward. But I do appreciate it's important for us to make sure that we have robust discussion at this table, and that any of the concerns or ideas that were intended to be spoken to that night are flagged and made. And again, as I said, we'll debate this when it comes back to the table, but this is the opportunity for some discussion. Go ahead, Councillor Patterson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, for the explanation. Hopefully everybody understood. And while I did support it going forward to the public, because I believe that the public input is critical to council to hear, because the official community plan is very important. However, if we had continued, I would have expressed concern in really 3 areas. And one is that a density bonus for zoning, I could understand if the district had brownfield sites or underutilized land to be developed. But land in Oak Bay is expensive, and density bonus will, in my opinion at least, increase the value of the land. It's not what was shown to council and was shown to the public. It's not supportable without clarity on what benefits the community can expect to receive. I know it may encourage more development, but we're here to represent the community. And if there was guarantees or at least a business case put forward that would produce supportive, accessible, or below market units, but I don't believe what is proposed will yield sufficient funds within a reasonable time frame to actually do that, but it could potentially raise the expectation that members of the community will think that it provides us with that opportunity, while it could in fact render the renter households more exposed to rising rents and rent evictions. The second item that I was concerned about was the not including anything for the UVic land, because the UVic, well, both of our educational institutions have caused a lot of pressure on housing in this district and in Saanich. And so I do believe that they have both the opportunity and the responsibility to be part of the solution to housing. And we know certainly that they are moving in that direction. So I think it would be only appropriate that we identify that within the plan. And I think most residents in this community are expecting that, even though we don't have a full plan for it, it will be addressed. The third item that is important to me, I'm a public transportation user, so I do take the bus on a regular basis. And I would just like to say that a lot of what I am seeing refers to transportation corridors and putting housing along transportation corridors. But Victoria and Saanich both have what the province refers to as TOAs, transportation-orientated areas. They're identified by the province, and the province sets regulations for those areas about heights and density and the type of development that would have to be done. Oak Bay has no TOA, so we do not have any regulatory framework that would be additional to us with a transportation-oriented area. We don't have one today. We don't have one in the foreseeable future. And so developing along transportation corridors in Oak Bay is not the same as what we talk about in Saanich or Victoria. And I think it's important that we keep that in mind. And in fact, based on recent statements by both Camosun and UVic, if they go forward with their housing developments, it would both reduce the need for parking, but also take pressure off of transit. So we may never get to be a transportation-orientated community. And so I think that everything that we consider must be modified to, in fact, identify what exists in this community and not in Victoria and Saanich. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. And I will just note and appreciate your comments. I was able to reach out that night when the error was discovered and asked, and so we tried to make sure that available information related to particularly the UVic plan was available, the things, and the financial modeling for density bonusing would be calculated and clear for those, so people are interested. I do appreciate those flagging those, so they didn't get missed in the whole piece. The TOAs a little bit less so on those pieces. Turn around, go to Councillor Green and then Braithwaite.
Thank you very much. And I appreciate the reconsideration, and I prepared my comments at the time, but was unable to provide them, so I will now, and thank you again. First of all, the future BC growth projections that are in the OCP draft the future BC growth projections that inform this OCP draft may be flawed. And since that meeting in September, we attended the UBCM, and I heard that from a number of communities, that these targets are based on projections that may not be possible. Pre-zoning or upzoning should occur for the UVic lands only, given their intention to develop and build out approximately 40 acres within Oak Bay's boundary. I do not support upzoning in Oak Bay's established neighborhoods, and pre-zoning is upzoning. They're one and the same. I do not support upzoning in Oak Bay's established neighborhoods. Small homes and bungalows and Oak Bay's built heritage and heritage sites are at risk. Outside of Victoria, Oak Bay is home to the largest percentage of built heritage on the South Island. Oak Bay declared a climate emergency in 2019, but the mitigation of risks to tree canopies, green spaces, and sensitive natural environments for new high density are not specifically addressed in this plan. In 2022, Oak Bay formally acknowledged its alignment with the UNDRIP legislation, but sites pertaining to potential archaeological concerns and costs are not specifically addressed in this plan. There is no focus on Oak Bay's current demographics, which do not appear to inform this plan, particularly related to accessibility and age-friendly housing forms. All of these multi-story buildings, townhouses, 3 and 4 stories, and so on, including fourplexes that are high, will be impossible for people with disabilities and very difficult for people who want to age out in accessible homes. There must be an equitable distribution of planned new density for Oak Bay that avoids overburdening neighborhoods that are already densified and diverse. So I think we have to be very careful that we are equitable in how density is planned. Finally, we must not rush this plan according to arbitrary and unrealistic timelines. Official community plans are technical and complex, with long-term impacts to land use, to core services, to our local economy, and most of all, to people who live and work here. We must respect the consultation process and the participation of our community by taking the necessary time to carefully analyze, process, and incorporate their feedback, all critical steps in determining the community's future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Green and Councillor Braithwaite. So I appreciate the applause, but I also just, it's important for all diversity of opinions. And I'll say this, like here, there's not public input, but especially through the OCP process, we're going to have people with different opinions. And some of the hardest things for people to do is to come up to the microphone and talk. And I think we just always like to just, we never get booing, which I'm very appreciative of, but even the applause sometimes is intimidating to people. So thank you. I just ask that we just listen carefully with respect. Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Braithwaite.
Thank you, and apparently I got the memo to wear red tonight. I'm not sure how that all happened, but there you go. I wore red without knowing all of you were going to be wearing red. Thanks, Mayor. And I just want to begin by acknowledging the significant amount of work that's gone into this draft official community plan and the zoning bylaw. I know that the staff and the consultants have been working under considerable pressure, and I appreciate the effort that's gone into it getting us this far. But that being said, like what the mayor was talking about at our last meeting in September, I also have serious concerns about the direction and scale of what's being proposed. In my view, the plan represents overreach. The height and density being contemplated simply do not fit Oak Bay's established character or scale. 12-story buildings around areas like Foul Bay and Cabra Bay Road would fundamentally change the look and feel of our community. Growth should be incremental and not transformational. I'm also very concerned about the unequal distribution of density. Concentrating large amounts of growth in just a few corridors amounts to density dumping and creates inequity between neighborhoods. Established residential areas should be left out of the upzoning equation. If we are to consider any higher density, it must come with strong design guidelines to manage massing, setbacks, and transitions. Without them, we lose risking the very qualities that make Oak Bay unique. The plan also doesn't fully address the impacts on infrastructure and taxation. Our aging systems can't absorb major new demand without a clear funding and upgrade plan. I also do not support pre-zoning or blanket upzoning or density bonusing, except potentially for the UVic endowment lands, where a comprehensive site-specific plan could be developed. We should maintain our local review process and our ability to assess projects based on context and design. Recent projects at St. Patrick, Pentland, and Bowker have already shown us how scale and fit can become real community flashpoints. We need to learn from those experiences and not repeat them on a larger scale. Finally, I must say that the provincial deadline of December 31st is completely unrealistic to me. It doesn't allow for the level of meaningful public input that this process deserves. Oak Bay should not be bullied into rushing this. If it takes more time to get this right, then that's what we should do. And I want to see a plan that reflects Oak Bay's values, our livability, and our long-term vision, not one that simply reacts to external pressures. Growth should and can happen, but it must happen on our terms. So I respectfully look forward to hearing back from the public. And if what we've heard in the last 2 weeks is any indication, it seems we have a long road ahead of us to get something that will reflect what our community wants in a revised draft that better reflects the Oak Bay. Our scale and infrastructure realities and the community character that people value needs to be in that. We can comply with provincial requirements without losing what makes Oak Bay special. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Braithwaite. Those are the three people that were had their hand up. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak now? Not seeing any. All of this feedback and the public input will come back to this table. Ultimately, some direction will be given from council as to what council feels is a reasonable path forward. That will also go to public hearing, and we have another opportunity for hearing if we got it right or not. And ultimately, whatever changes are going to go forward, we'll follow that process. So it's tight. So like as I said before, please participate in the survey to the public. It's a very important aspect of this whole piece. Not seeing other hands, I'm happy to call the question. I'm going to ask people to stick around with the same vote as before so don't confuse the matter. All those in favor and those opposed. I have Councillors Green, Braithwaite, and myself opposed. That carries. It's dealt with the procedural error. Again, my apologies. That was my doing. I should not have. I just miscounted hands. I will not do it again. There are systems in place to prevent that from happening. So with that, thank you everybody for allowing me to just do this reconsideration and allow those conversations to happen. We're moving now to items, section 6, which has 2 items on the agenda, both of which are available for public input. So if people are here for either 6.1 or 6.2, we would encourage you, and that is the end of the meeting, is those 2 things. Oh, you're welcome to stay or you're welcome to leave. We have some other interesting business going on. You're welcome to stick around. I'm going to just go on to the next item. Thank you very much. Because we don't have much in the way of time, I don't think, to go through here. So I'm going to go to 6.1, Streets and Traffic Bylaw Amendments for the Henderson and Haultain-Estevan Bikeways. Mr. Rennick, welcome back.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the welcome. The item before council tonight is, I would say, a relatively minor procedural piece related to the Henderson and Haultain-Estevan Bikeways. Council did endorse the design of these projects in July. One of the considerations in those projects is that, sorry, there's quite a din behind me.
You're clear to us, so that helps.
Okay.
Yeah.
One of the considerations in those designs is that because they are designed to the neighborhood bikeway standard, all of the roads within those bikeways are slated to be 30-kilometer-per-hour roads, and in some cases there are speed humps to achieve that compliance. Essentially what this bylaw amendment is looking to do is to create all of those 30-kilometer-per-hour zones. The reason that we're doing it now is because through council's direction, staff opportunistically installed the speed humps on Florence as part of completing the project. So now we have Florence as a 50K unsigned street with speed humps on it. So we would really like to get the 30K signs up on Florence. And when I proposed bringing this, a member of my staff suggested that we might as well do all of it in one council report, because when the bylaw is amended to have the other 30K zones, they won't be enforceable until the signs go up, but it means that we won't have to come back before council a second time. So that's why, even though the immediate cause is to put the signs up on Florence, essentially it's just taking a blanket approach.
Thank you. I might see if someone from staffing could just talk to people in the hallway just to maybe step outside and converse. We do need to have this door open. It's an open meeting. We want the public to have access and not feel excluded. Thank you, Mr. Rennick, for that. Are there any questions related to this? Oh, I do. Go ahead, Councillor Patterson and then Smart.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and through you to Director Rennick. Thank you for the report. And just a couple of clarifications I would like. It starts right at the start of the report to say to make the entire bikeway route 30 kilometers an hour. I like the reduction in speed. That is good. But just a clarification on the bikeway, because the bikeway is both on public streets and off public streets. So for the 30 kilometers per hour, is that the entire bikeway, or where it is on the roads? I guess what I'm questioning is, if on the off-road pathways, is it also 30 kilometers an hour?
I think there's some road right-of-ways that have trails. Is that what you're referring to?
Through the parking lot.
Mr. Rennick?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And through the mayor, this is specifically referring to the roads that are also, I don't want to say off public roads. Let's just say the roads that cars can drive on.
Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Smart?
Thank you, through your mayor, to Mr. Rennick. It appeared to me, and apologies if I missed it, but that the lower portion of this route on, say, Goldsmith, Elgin, and B might not have been included below Cabral Bay Road. And I was just wondering, is that because those are all already 30 kilometers an hour? Could you just clarify? Thank you.
Mr. Rennick?
Through the mayor, Elgin Road is included in the bylaw. Goldsmith and B are not because, as Councillor Smart correctly noted, they are already in the bylaw as 30K zones.
Thank you. Don't see any other hands up for questions, so perhaps a motion to receive the report to start.
Public input?
Oh, my apologies, thank you. I will at this time, I got out of the habit there, go over to the public. Anybody, members of the public who wish to address this item on the agenda, please come forward. Welcome. So this is on item 6.1. Please just name and municipality of residence and welcome.
Great, thank you. Kevin Hall, Oak Bay. I just wanted to just speak directly to the request to have the 30 kilometers put on Florence and the bikeway generally in support. And really, I was hoping to use this opportunity as well to offer my appreciation to council and staff. I spoke a number of months ago about some of the deficiencies that I felt were part of the bikeway plan. I'm probably not supposed to do this, but I thought it was a good opportunity. I spoke publicly about my concerns, and I thought it was appropriate that I speak publicly to thank you for taking that input, making the amendments that were made, and really taking that opportunity to listen to residents and making the changes. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. And he stuck around, which is great. I have Ms. Matthews online. Please go ahead. Just state your name and municipality of residence for the record.
Yeah, my name is Kathleen Matthews, and I have lived in Oak Bay for more than 30 years now. The longest place I've ever lived in my life. In terms of bike lanes and where bikes are going to be going and where they're allowed to go, I spend a lot of time in our alleyways. And I'm finding an increasing number of bikes roaring through our alleyways, and I'm just wondering if there's any consideration for laneways. I'm talking about laneways. Many of them are not, most of them are not paved. Is there any consideration about how to ensure that bikes cutting through the lanes have some kind of a, they're not going 30K through those lanes? Because many of us walk our dogs through there. We're just ambling through, and it's becoming increasingly preoccupied with bikes going rather quickly. So it's just a comment, and if you have an answer, that would be great. I'm just wondering how our laneways fit into this whole bicycle world and the speed limits we're talking about.
Sure, thank you. They're not included in this particular bylaw, but Mr. Rennick, perhaps you could just talk to how speed limits are enforced on our laneways.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Enforcement of speed limits is really more the Department of the Oak Bay Police. However, in terms of the bylaw states no person shall drive or operate a vehicle at a greater rate of speed than 20 kilometers per hour on the highways or portions thereof hereinafter enumerated, any lane not exceeding 8 meters in width. So they are not signed with 20 kilometer per hour signs, but all of the laneways being referred to already have a 20 kilometer per hour speed limit.
Thank you. It's always nice to ask questions when the right person's in the room to answer them. Did that answer your question, Ms. Matthews?
It's very helpful because I had no idea what, I mean, I sometimes drive down the laneways because it's sometimes a quick way out, but not that I'm going fast. But the other thing I just wanted to add is this idea of speed bumps on roadways that are that may also be bicycle paths. I'd just like to remind people that Windsor Park and the roads around Windsor Park are often used for bike racing. And I hope that you don't put speed bumps on those roads as part of, I mean, I think 30K is a great speed limit, but not, the speed bumps should not be put on Curry or Windsor or any of the roads where they have these bike races going round and round and round. They couldn't effectively have a race if you have speed bumps with just little passageways through. So I was alarmed at some point when one of your staff said that they were considering a speed bump because they're also going to maybe put some better crosswalks in to enter the park and exit the park. So I just wanted to make that point, and I hope that's understood.
Yep, thank you very much for that. This bylaw changes don't impact those streets around Windsor Park, but certainly those points are well noted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other members of the public who wish to speak to council about item 6.1, the streets and traffic bylaw amendments? I don't see any, so I'll come back to this table, have a motion to
Move
receive.
receipt.
Moved and seconded, thank you. There's a debate, receipt of reports. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed?
I'll move that the Streets and Traffic Bylaw number 4100, 2000 Amendment Bylaw number 4933, 2025 be read a first and second time.
Moved and seconded, thank you. Any discussion? Councillor Smart? And then Appleton.
Yeah, I just wanted to express my continued concern around the removal of many speed humps from the original design and the inability of signage to have a historically significant impact on speeds when it's the only measure towards traffic calming. But I will be supporting the bylaw.
Thank you. Councillor Appleton?
Well, thank you, Worship. I will just take this opportunity to say, as we evaluate different interventions to calm traffic around the district, just how important a reduction from even 40 kilometers an hour to 30 kilometers an hour is. And so a pedestrian, council and the public have probably seen this data, but this is a good opportunity to remind everybody that a pedestrian hit by a car at 30 kilometers an hour has a 90% chance of survival. And if you get hit at about 50 kilometers an hour, you might have less than 25% chance of survival, depending on which numbers you use. But certainly 50 to 30K reduces your chances of a fatal incident by well over half by most metrics. So 30 kilometers an hour for most streets in Oak Bay is entirely appropriate and suitable and will have substantive benefits. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed?
And I'll move that the Streets and Traffic Bylaw number 4100, 2000 Amendment Bylaw number 4933, 2025 be read a third time.
Moved and seconded, thank you. Any discussion? Did you discuss on third reading? All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed? Thank you. That will come back for adoption at a future meeting. Brings us to item number 6.2, which is the Parking Facilities Bylaw Amendment for multi-unit residential parking requirements. Mr. Bull, welcome back.
Thank you, Your Worship. Short introduction to this bylaw. The bylaw itself makes changes to our parking facilities bylaw, reducing the number of required parking for multi-unit residential developments from 2 stalls down to 1 stall. It also removes the requirement for additional visitor parking. These changes are in part to modernize our parking requirements, but also to comply with a directive that was issued by the Minister of Housing earlier this summer. The current bylaw requirements date back from 1995 and have been known to be out of date with current practices and stand out in the region as quite high. That said, for a couple of recent developments that we did have for multi-unit development, Obey, the district already has opted to customize parking requirements, so we haven't actually required this rate to new development in any recent history. Let me see, this supports other changes that have been made over in the recent years as well for parking. For infill housing, parking rates were changed and updated and lowered. And this particular change would give us a standard or a general rate for multi-unit as well. As has come up a couple of times, the parking facilities bylaw does still require further work as well, which is currently a bigger project that is pending for the future. But this change is both required and timely as well, given that the change that we're considering for the NDRGP as well. With that, I'll end my summary, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have questions. Go to Councillor Smart and Patterson.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor to staff, I really appreciate the simplicity of this and of course understand the procedural request that was made. And my question is, considering the simplicity of this, would it not also be quite simple to add that one secure bicycle parking spot be provided per unit? And I'm wondering if that could be a potential amendment and if staff could comment on that. Thank you.
Mr. Bowl, there's some contemplation of that as a potential future piece, but not built into this. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Through you, that is something that could be added if that's council's will. It doesn't require some follow-up work because we need to look at what is the wording, what kind of facilities are we requesting. In some other bylaws that I'm familiar with, it gets a little bit more complex if we talk about bicycle parking. But that's something that could be requested by council. Thank you.
Mr. Smart.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, just a follow-up question to staff on that. Would staff be able to comment on if we left this scope of work, what the time frame would be before we were likely able to deal with it? And in that time, if staff could anticipate how many multifamily residential projects we might potentially see that would miss out on providing bicycle parking. Thank you.
Mr. Bull, it was a bit of crystal balling there, but go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, I'll give this a try. Let me see. In terms of the timing of the wider changes to the parking facilities bylaw, I can't give you a date for that because that's part of the council priorities scheduling. And let me see. In the meantime, right now what we see is a gradual uptake in infill housing projects. I think we're at about 20 applications, which vary from accessory dwelling units to triplexes and fourplexes. A little bit different than the multi-unit development we are looking at in this bylaw, but still a development that could be subject to a bicycle parking requirement in the meantime. However, that's not currently in place, of course, so this is something that either gets picked up by the people building those projects, and it is included because it is more and more an expected feature, of course. And I think that amount of application will probably continue into the future. I'm not sure when we can expect actual multi-unit larger projects. That so far has been really occasionally, so I won't speculate on if that will change in the future or not. That's still unknown. Thank you.
Anything else? Oh, go. Please continue.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, just one last follow-up question. I just wondered if staff, from a work point of view, should I put forward an amendment, be able to comment on whether it would be more straightforward to suggest that we simply add one secure bicycle spot per unit, or would it be more workable for staff to have an amendment that suggested that we have something in line with what is asked for in neighboring municipalities?
Mr. Bull, if you can answer the question, go ahead. If not, if that's something that you wish to put forward, Councillor Smart, we may just help you with some language. Mr. Bull, do you have a preference there if given direction to?
Yeah, thank you for the Mayor. I think if council wanted to make another kind of shorter term change for bicycle parking, it might be more helpful to get direction on that as well, like we got direction for this particular change. Excuse me, this is from the Minister. But that would give a little bit more time to look at those provisions and do a bit more research rather than adding it in right now today. I would, in that case, if that's what Council would desire, I would like to take a little bit of time to look at some examples and see if there's another way to return to you with a minor change while the bigger review is pending. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bull. Anything else, Councillor Smart?
Thank you. To you, Mayor, just procedurally, would you see that best as a motion arising based on staff's recent comments?
Procedurally, we can do one of two things. We could stop this work and ask it to go back and be done. Those changes, if council wishes it, so it'd probably take a motion to amend and go back. Or if there's a desire to see the work done later, then you could a motion to move the motion as is or a variation thereof, and if there's something left outstanding, we could have a motion arising to direct some of that future work. I do think, hearing what I've heard, it's probably appropriate to, give it some room for wiggle, because it sounds like there's some work that is required for council, for staff to take that away. But procedurally, either one is viable.
Thank you.
Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you to staff, thank you for the report, Director Bull. You spoke about the requirements to adjust our parking, and I think we all realize that we're trying to bring them in line with what is more acceptable for changing circumstances. However, with the new legislative changes to residential off-street parking requirements, it is left to the municipalities to set standards for accessible parking spots for residential uses, both within the built environment and within on streets. And so I'm wondering if staff can speak to that, because I haven't found that in the information that we have.
Mr. Bull?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I haven't looked into that particular topic in detail, but it is another topic that could be dealt with both for on-site and, well, actually for the streets it's a bit of a different story, because that would be a different bylaw. Let me see. It's something else that is commonly found in other more modern parking facilities bylaws elsewhere. So similar to bicycle parking, that could be something if there were an interest in a earlier solution while the bigger review is awaiting, then that would be something that council could ask for, and we could look into that. Thank you.
Patterson?
So if I might go back, that and I know I did mention on-street parking too, but this is specifically for multi-unit residential, that we do have to have the guidelines for accessible parking units for a building, and I haven't seen that in anything we have reviewed yet. So I think it's important that so much of that is tied into how many parking spots we are defining for a building. So I think we really have to have that information.
Councillor Patterson, I'm going to ask you if you you cited guidelines, which are not necessarily the same as requirements. So can you just maybe just cite here where those guidelines are, and maybe then staff can have a quick, I'll ask staff if they have.
Well, that's right. And it ties into, of course, the provincial accessibility legislation that is in place now. And while they didn't, the province admits that they did not take this into consideration for accessible parking at the time they were making recommendations for how much parking should be allowed or limited for multi-residential, that this is now something we have to take into consideration. Province is not giving any guidance on it. They're leaving that to the municipalities. So that's as much as I could research, but it seems like this is it's a gray area with no guidance from the province, and to date we have no standards for it. So it's difficult to decide on what our parking allocation should be, or visitor parking allocation should be, unless we come to define something with respect to accessibility, which is certainly important for a lot of our residents, particularly in Oak Bay, young, old, or incapacitated in any way. Thank you.
All right, thank you. But same guidelines would probably apply if you wish to suggest either motion arising for maybe some of that work to be looked at. It's probably all we could do, or if you wanted to maybe tie it, probably not as part of the core thing, but you could, if it was tied to a visitor, I guess we don't, the current recommendation is not to have any visitor parking requirements, but it could be tied to something like that as part of some guidelines. Councillor Appleton?
Thank you, Worship. And just not to my point, but I just wanted to thank Councillor Patterson for bringing that point up. That's important food for thought, so I appreciate that. Just picking up on Councillor Smart's discussion with respect to bike parking, and I too am interested in pursuing this, but not, certainly expediting what's necessary to do by the end of the year based on provincial directives, but picking up this next piece. So I heard Mr. Bowl speak to some of the work that they might undertake, and I'm sort of interested in exploring whether or not there's essentially a medium option of being able to pass what's existing here as far as the parking bylaw right now, or by the end of the year as is prescribed. The full parking bylaw revision is coming at a later date, which is going to require a fair bit of work. So I'm just wondering, is Mr. Bull referring to essentially what's laid out here in future options, item 4, which is considering requiring bicycle parking standards and or transportation demand, et cetera, as a way of mitigating the impact of reduced parking standards? Like, is there a way, is just confirming with Mr. Bull, is this kind of like the work that would be undertaken? Is that the piece that would be fleshed out? And is it reasonable for us to direct staff to bring that back on some sort of, reasonable timeline that is in advance of the full parking bylaw review? So I'm just kind of getting a sense of whether or not that component 4 out of future options could be evaluated in the median term and brought back to council for evaluation.
Mr. Bull, I'll let you answer the question. I'm going to suggest for things like that, we probably want to have that just referred to a council priority process, just because it might have, that would allow staff to give back some time and dollar amounts. But Mr. Bull, do you have any, if you have a sense of what that impact might be here, you're welcome to share it.
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, the options, those particular options, future options, they're referenced in the bylaw. They are definitely meant for the scope of that larger project. But if there were topics of interest that council wished to do earlier, then the other option would be to identify that topic and indicate a desire to have an interim-like measure in the short run, and then staff can follow up with this as a regular action item following a council motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Upland, anything else?
So thanks, Your Worship. Just to follow up on what you had mentioned, this could, so and based on what Mr. Bull is saying, so we could potentially take the entirety of this item 4 here and refer it to council priorities session in order to discuss it and scope how much work would be required. Would that be a suitable response?
I believe that's probably possible, but Mr. Bull, any thoughts on that?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, if it's part of the council priorities discussion, it kind of assumes that either that topic on its own or the whole parking facilities bylaw is a council priority project, and on that basis it gets prioritized and timed. The other option would be to take number 4 on its own, for example, and ask for a shorter term solution that is less detailed and requires less review, but would put in some basic provisions. Thank you.
Thank you. My only other observation of that is there is a parking review priority that is currently in the queue for work undergoing. So that is happening. So if that's it, this would logically, to my mind, fit into that portion of it. But that's the so there may be some clarification of adding it in there, or as Mr. Bull noted, may want to pull out some of that for additional work if that's the will of council. Councillor Appleton?
I appreciate what you're saying, Your Worship. I would just make the really quick comment that we've been talking about a full over. This has been on the priority session for quite some time, and it keeps getting kicked back down the list. And so, for as long as I've been on council, we've been talking about a parking bylaw overhaul. So, I would really like, as these potential units that might be affected by this bylaw change come online, I'd like us to not be still talking about the parking bylaw.
Thank you. I don't have other hands. I'm just going to ask a quick question myself then, and that is, in the proposed bylaw here, there's the spaces for visitors has been removed where other jurisdictions, even though they have lower units per, in some cases some lower, some higher, but the spots per unit, but they all still include space for visitor spaces. And I'm just curious, is that I guess what the rationale is for that, or if it makes sense for us to maybe possibly maintain some visitor parking requirements as part of our bylaw, if other jurisdictions are keeping them. Mr. Bull? Perhaps I'm misreading that chart, but that's how I read the chart, was that some less and some more higher than our rates right now.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I think we went with based on the directive, we focused on that, the 1 unit per stall. I believe we didn't think that the visitor parking requirement usually has a lot of effect, because usually so far multi-unit developments are case-by-case projects and they're all customized, so it is usually included in different ways anyway. But other than that, for the case of simplification, there's no other overriding rationale to keep it in, or sorry, to leave it out, or to leave it in. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Okay, so we have a report in front of us here. I haven't seen other hands, so I'm going to go to the, other questions, and then
Yes.
we'll go to the public.
Yes,
Please
so
go ahead.
sorry, I'm just asking for a point of clarification. There is a requirement in here for visitor parking. So didn't understand your question, Mayor.
So the changes that are proposed for the bylaw remove the visitor parking requirements. It is just the single parking spot per unit. It's written into the text, into the report, but I missed it as well. I caught it at a second read through, and yeah, so that was my. Thank you. Councillor Green? Okay. I'm happy to turn to members of the public with any comments or questions before we come back to this table. Procedurally, this is what we do. We allow us to ask questions, and then we have public can make comments or questions, and we'll come back to this table for motions and direction. Please, welcome back, Mr. Hall. But if you just state your name and municipality again for the record.
Thank you, Kevin Hall, Oak Bay, and I apologize. I have getting over the cold, so if my voice goes, that's what's going on there. I read the report and the proposed bylaw and welcome I think tying it into the provincial legislation or what they've asked for. I guess I have two questions, and that is, with respect to the bylaw, if it were adopted on the 1 unit or 1 stall per unit, does that still allow developers to come forward with a variance to reduce further the parking requirements?
Correct. Both options are available to developers. They can ask, but they have to get permission from council to go lower, and they can provide more parking stalls than are required. This forms a minimum under the bylaw.
Yes, I saw that in the report, and I look forward to the day that one of the developers comes forward with more than the minimum. And I guess another clarifying question, if I may. Developers who have multifamily or multi-resident units currently in the process of zoning or variances, will this inform council prior to it being adopted, or will it affect those who are already in the hopper when the bylaw is ultimately adopted?
Sure. I'll turn to Mr. Bull for that one. My understanding is the bylaws that are in place at the time of the application coming to council are in effect, but Mr. Bull?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. There is a limited protection for approved projects. Right now in this category, I don't think we have any approved recently, so it would effectively not apply, but that's how it would work. Thanks.
Just for the record, that usually it matters if you're, say, going from 1 to 2 requirements, so they require more, they would be grandfathered in an application. If the requirements are going down, then they're typically not impacted because there's less requirement.
So if there were an ongoing request for less than 1?
Correct. They would still go through a variance process or a special rezoning process.
Appreciate the clarification. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak to council? I will just point out there was one application I know of in Greater Victoria where the council of the day asked for less parking, and the developer did ask that they be allowed to add more parking in. So it has happened. Appreciate it's rare. Yeah, go ahead, council. Just before I do that, before any other members of the public, I'm just looking online or here in the room. Not seeing any. Okay, yes, go ahead, Councillor Appleton.
Thank you, Your Worship. And just to, I meant to ask this question, and that twigged my memory. In a number of other jurisdictions where the point being asking for a variance for less parking than prescribed by the bylaw, in a number of other jurisdictions, a municipality can prescribe a fee to be charged to the developer in that type of payment in lieu of parking to be applied to different types of initiatives, either active transportation or different types of amenity contributions. So is that you'll excuse my ignorance here, but I will ask Mr. Bull, does that normally sit within the parking bylaw, or does it sit within a building and planning bylaw, or even just exclusively in fees and charges?
Mr. Bull.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, that would be part of the parking arrangements, which in our case, it would be the parking facilities bylaw, I believe. But I haven't reviewed this in detail, though, but that would be right. general answer. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so here we're just getting them, tossing into their hands. I'm going to go to the, start a process of motions. Can I get a motion to receive the report to start with? Moved and seconded, thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed? Should we try the recommendation here and see if we want amendments?
Your worship, I can move that parking facilities bylaw number 3540, 1986 amendment bylaw number 4927, 2025 be read a first and second time.
Is there a seconder? It's been seconded. Thank you. Go ahead.
Not much to say, your worship, other than to say that, this is a provincial directive, but it does, sort of more accurately reflect modern parking standards. I think, we have heard from folks who are living in existing buildings that were built to the 2-space standard that not even the full capacity of parking is even coming close to be used. And we have seen variances at this council table where owners of apartment buildings have come in to ask for deletion of parking spaces for storage and additional space within the building. So.
Council, did you see Councillor Watson's hand? No? You were just a seconder?
Yes, I'm happy to support this motion. I think it's that the staff have shown quite clearly that we're out of sync and out of step, and it is a requirement for us to bring in this new standards, and I think it's quite reasonable, so I don't have any problem with it. Thank you.
I have Councillor Braithwaite, Green, and then Patterson.
Thanks so much, Mayor. I fully recognize that this amendment is being brought forward in response to the provincial directive under the Housing Supply Act. However, when changes are mandated from above, I believe it's important that we as local council clearly express our concerns and reservations on the record, particularly when a change has real on-the-ground implications for how our community functions and grows. Oak Bay's context is its built form, transportation network, and demographic profile is unique. Provincial policy is often applied broadly, but parking and mobility are fundamentally local issues that affect our residents every single day. My main concern is that this bylaw assumes that most residents in multi-unit housing can or will rely on alternate transportation options. Unfortunately, that simply does not reflect the current reality in Oak Bay. We have limited public transit coverage and a high proportion of seniors and mobility-challenged residents who continue to depend on vehicles for daily needs. Reducing the minimum parking requirements to one stall per unit and eliminating visitor parking entirely risks creating real problems for both residents and surrounding neighborhoods. I'm particularly concerned about the spillover parking into adjacent residential streets, which are already under pressure in areas near multi-unit buildings. That has direct livability and safety impacts. The removal of visitor parking is especially problematic. Visitors include caregivers, tradespeople, delivery services, and family members, many of whom drive. Without visitor parking, they will inevitably park on surrounding residential streets, creating conflict and congestion. This also raises accessibility and equity concerns for seniors and residents with disabilities who depend on caregivers visiting their homes. While I understand that reducing parking requirements is meant to help reduce housing costs, in practice that benefit often doesn't reach the end user. Developers may build the minimum, but the price of units rarely drops. Instead, residents simply end up without adequate parking. In Oak Bay's case, where most households still own at least one vehicle, this may not increase affordability. It may simply shift the cost and inconvenience onto residents and neighbors. Oak Bay has been working hard to balance housing needs with maintaining livable, functional neighborhoods, and I believe that the parking bylaw should reflect our community's own planning priorities, not just a one-size-fits-all standard. Our official community plan and forthcoming village area plan will give us better, locally grounded tools to evaluate how parking, transit, and density work together. And until those are in place, I'm not comfortable supporting a blanket reduction that could have unintended long-term consequences. And I understand that we may be legally obligated to comply with this directive, but I will not be supporting this bylaw tonight because I believe it's a poor policy for Oak Bay. I really want to see us comply in form if necessary, but also send a clear letter to the Minister outlining our concerns, including the lack of local transit and transportation alternatives, the likely increase in spillover parking in established neighborhoods, the impact on accessibility and visitor needs, and the importance of retaining local flexibility in setting parking standards. In my view, it's important that we register this dissent not as a resistance to housing, but as a defense to practical, livable urban design that works for our community today. So, I'm not supporting this bylaw because while it may meet provincial directive, it doesn't meet Oak Bay's real mobility, livability, and accessibility needs, and it risks creating new problems that could undermine the very housing outcomes it's meant to support. I think once everybody else has had a chance to speak, I would consider putting an amendment on the floor that would include visitor parking. So when it comes to that point, Mayor, I will probably do that. Thank you.
Process, if people are threatening to make an amendment, I always just, you have the floor. If you wish to make an amendment, you can do so and
then,
motivate.
I would like to make the amendments to include the current language on visitor parking spaces.
So, sorry, I'm not sure I entirely understand. We don't have the original language in the bylaw, so that's what you're asking for, is that the current language related to the requirements for
Yes.
visitor parking is retained? Is that
Yes, please.
motion?
Yeah.
Okay. Procedurally here, we have first and second reading on the floor. I just want to make sure we can give direction at second reading. We can probably, this would essentially send it back for staff to make changes to it. Is that correct? And I'll go to Ms. Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor. Procedurally, it would be best to give first and second reading and then provide an amendment following first and second reading, and then it can come back for third reading as amended.
Call the question on second reading?
Yes, unless you would like to refer the bylaws back to staff at first and second reading to incorporate the changes, and we can come back for first and second reading again.
No, procedurally, I'll do first and second reading. We can then, if there's any motions to amend, we can deal with it at that time. So here we are speaking to first and second reading for all members of council. Thank you. My apologies, Councillor, for giving you bad advice there. Councillor Green?
Thank you very much, and I appreciate all the work that the planning department is doing, both with the OCP review and parking and everything else. I know it's quite a lot, and it's been, a real burden for everyone. As someone who has recently experienced a disability, and I have to say, I have learned so much about my community and the people who live here, but I've also learned about limitations and what inadequate parking, the impacts it has on people who cannot navigate mobility, cannot deal with the needs of pedestrians who are limited to spaces and places that they can get to. And it's it's very depressing, actually. And having gone through it, I've never had to limit or think about where I go until the last 2 years. So I want you to know, first of all, this bylaw directive, and this has nothing to do with our staff or anything else, does not square with the accessibility initiative that the province has mandated. We have an accessibility committee. In fact, they met a week or two ago to go over the OCP draft. And I will tell you that a couple of them who are substantially permanently disabled are pretty distraught, because they don't feel and they don't see their needs reflected in the work that we're doing right now, and the needs are not reflected in this bylaw change for parking. And the reduction of visitor parking, it means that these people face isolation, perhaps. I think this bylaw works for highly densified urban centers like the City of Victoria, but I don't think it works for this community. And I think that we're putting a lot of people at risk by not having adequate parking. I can tell you that Oak Bay Avenue has one handicap drop-off space. This is between Monterey and Wilmot, actually between Monterey and Foul Bay. One handicap drop-off space, one handicap space by Scotiabank, and that's it for handicap parking. There is one space behind Athlone Court for shopping. And I believe there's one on Monterey near the parking lot, and Monterey Center has 2 or 3. But it is woefully inadequate. And I'm really glad that I've had the firsthand experience. So unfortunately, as much as I would like to be obedient and follow the directive, I'm not going to be on this issue, because I have experienced it personally, and I know how limiting and sometimes depressing it is not to be able to move freely in my community or park my car where I can access services or businesses or shops. It's incredibly depressing. And it does make you feel so dependent. I am going to vote against this bylaw, and I appreciate the amendment. I think that Councillor Braithwaite wants to include. I think that's a very important one. But I'm struggling with this accessibility versus parking. It's bizarre to me that these two things don't connect at the provincial level. I don't understand it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Green. I have Councillor Patterson, then Smart, and then I'll say a couple of words. Go ahead, Councillor Patterson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I won't be supporting the motion as it is put forward. I would propose to amend it if Councillor Braithwaite hadn't. But yes, I understand there are directives from the province, but we are obeying or trying to comply with directives on one side, but we're not paying any heed to the directives to set up a standard for accessible parking. And we follow the governance instructions to set up a committee. And I think it has to follow through in all of these policies as we are developing it. And it is not, it's infirmment that causes inaccessibility comes to all ages, all genders, it's across the board. And so I feel just as strongly for the parents with disabled children who are in motorized scooters that have to manage their way through the district too. So I feel very strongly about it, and I think that unfortunately we are losing accessibility in our overall demand to really, move forward quickly without moving forward thoughtfully. So I don't know what Councillor Braithwaite will recommend for amending to, other than just going back to what it was, but on top of maintaining that visitor parking, I think that is very important until such time as we have some framework for accessible parking. So I would also want to amend it to direct staff to bring forward a recommendation for accessible parking for multi-unit buildings.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. We have Councillor Smart.
Yeah, thank you. I will be supporting the motion on the table. I think this is a really important initiative, particularly with regards to certainty for project planning. And if we want to actually put a message out there for what we want to see in the community, in order for people to realize if they even want to purchase a property and develop something in Oak Bay, they need to have a sense of whether the cost of parking is going to be prohibitive before they even buy that property. Right now, the parking is so heavily prescripted that it's similar to a spot rezoning where people know they're going to go in for a variance, but they don't know what they're going to receive, and so it creates a great amount of uncertainty. This gives a direction, this very close to what I would describe as sort of a common best practice right now, although there's even a further trend to get rid of parking minimums altogether. But I see this as a really important move towards actually allowing pre-planning for design. It also will allow for less impact on nature if less parking spaces are required, and it will also minimize the amount of blasting that will be required on a project. But as has been already stated, developers will build more parking if they feel like the people purchasing those suites will want more parking. This just simply gives a flexibility upfront and gives certainty to projects. I would like to also make a motion to amend when the time comes with regards to bicycle parking, as already mentioned, and I would support adding visitor parking spaces if it was in line with a couple of the examples with the 0.1 space per dwelling unit ratio, then I would support it if it was that specific. I will comment that visitor parking can be very tricky to design in projects because the current expectation is often to have a secure parking space for the residents of a building, and therefore all the visitor parking spots are often located on the outside of secure parking. And if there's too many visitor parking spots required, it can make it extremely expensive and complicated to have, say, double security fencing. And so I think that keeping the actual minimum requirement for visitor parking stalls low is really important from, again, a project feasibility standpoint. But I would support it if it came in at the 0.1 space per dwelling unit ratio. Thank you.
Thank you for all the comments. So the motion on the floor for reading is first and second time. I'll support the motion as it is. I will also support if there's well, it depends on what the wording is, but I'd be very supportive of reinstalling visitor parking requirements and making one of those parking stalls an accessible parking spot. Seems a reasonable approach to the interim time until we have more policy in place. I do think that the request from the province of 1 unit or 1 parking spot per unit is in line with what essentially we have been granting in the last number of applications. The applicants have come in and appealed to have approximately that amount, and council has found it to be a reasonable ask in those cases. So I don't have a great issue with that. I think we're sort of on the path to that in any case. So that core part I don't have an issue with, but I do think that there is some requirement for visitor parking. And I do just raise, I know that there's a cost to parking and that can be an encumbrance. That being said, the rationale for having parking minimums, to my mind, is very much that the owners of the home, the building, and the owners of the vehicles take responsibility for the cost of that feature. What happens otherwise is that the expectation is that the community picks up those costs to provide parking spots in public spaces, which will slightly cheaper than internal parking spots, still cost money, and then fall to the municipality to maintain. So I think there is some reasonable expectation of owners to provide parking stalls, but I do think the 1 per unit is a reasonable compromise going forward, and I think doubled up on that with the provincial request for that. I think it makes sense for us to expedite that change some. That's where I'm standing on this. So I had a number of people speak, so Councillor Watson, go ahead.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak a second time. I just wanted to say a few things. I do believe that we do need to do further work on visitor, bicycle, and accessible parking, but I have difficulty with trying to do that policy analysis on the fly here and just propose things, particularly given Councillor Green's observation that the development industry and those who are thinking about purchasing land and bringing much needed housing to our community need some certainty. And I don't like the idea of kind of throwing some things in at the last minute which haven't been put in front of us analyzed, and then getting to this parking analysis that we have as a strategic priority project to be done. So I would actually prefer that, although I completely hear the message about accessible parking, and that does need to be addressed, that making extra special projects to deal with these issues one-off is, I don't think it's an efficient use of our policy capacity in the organization. So I would prefer to see this bylaw go forward the way it is tonight and leave these other things to be addressed in a comprehensive and studied way. And I also did hear a lot of comment that seemed to be a little confused about the requirements for accessible parking on our streets, which is a separate issue. We're just being asked to address here parking requirements for multi-unit developments. The access to parking in our roadways, accessible parking, is definitely an important issue, but it's not the subject of the discussion this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. We have first and second reading on the bylaw as presented. I'm going to call the question unless I see other hands. All those in favor? And those opposed? I have Councillor Green, Patterson, and Braithwaite opposed. That motion carries. Councillor Braithwaite, you were the first to indicate, and then Councillor Smart. Both indicate you might be interested in putting forward a motion to amend.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to put forth an amendment, that language included in our current bylaw in regards to visitor parking spaces be included in this bylaw.
Moved and seconded. I'm just going to turn to staff to make sure that we're very clear about what's being asked here. Mr. Bull, in the report, it speaks to the requirement for one parking spot per four residential units in the current bylaw. So restoring that language, I just want to make sure that we're all very clear about what that ask is, which is to put that same language back into the bylaw. Is that doable, for one thing? I don't know how much things have been changed around in the changing of the bylaw, but is that language clear to you in terms of what the ask is?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, that would be very clear. It means that the amendment bylaw needs to be updated to specifically pinpoint that particular fact. So we would like, if that's the will of council, it would be best to have the bylaw come back later, revised. But it's very clear what that change or limiting the change would mean. Thank you.
Okay, so it should, just for our clarification, procedurally, should the motion be to refer this back to staff with the changes as opposed to directing the change of the bylaw, or do they have the same effect?
They essentially have the same effect because whatever amendments occur at this time, staff will bring back for third reading as amended.
Okay. Thank you. So moved and seconded. Consider the motion in order. It's in alignment with pieces. Please go ahead, Councillor.
Yeah,
I don't know if you need to speak much to it.
No, I don't. I just believe, as my previous comment suggested, that we always have a need for visitor parking spaces. Again, they include caregivers, tradespeople, delivery services, and family members, many who drive. And without that visitor parking, they're going to inevitably park on surrounding residential streets and create conflict and congestion. And again, this also raises accessibility and equity concerns for seniors and residents with disabilities who depend on caregivers visiting their homes. Thank you.
Thank you. Seconder wish to speak? Go ahead.
Yeah, I would just like to clarify a comment made by my colleague, and that was that I was maybe perhaps confused about the difference between streets and multi-unit or multi-buildings.
I think for the record, she didn't say you were confused. I think they were just confusing the issue.
That there was, I
thank
confused the issue because they're actually connected. And so if we densify in village centers, for instance, or densify around small commercial nodes, we are going to have that issue. And they are very connected. So parking for me is a holistic issue. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you for the comment. Councillor Smart and Councillor Appleton on the motion to amend.
Yeah, thank you. I unfortunately won't be supporting the motion due to the ratio provided. I see this as just another way, essentially, of raising the amount of parking spaces per unit to 1.25. If we have this many visitor parking spaces behind what's going to be a secure gate, the visitors aren't going to use it. The Amazon delivery guy isn't going to use it. The mail person isn't going to use it. The service people are not going to use this. Maybe somebody who's going to visit somebody for a day might use it. But these spaces are just going to go unused and are going to increase the unaffordability of the building for everybody.
Thank you. Councillor Appleton.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, similarly, not supporting the motion on the floor to amend. I actually do support the idea of there being visitor parking included. The quantity included in the previous bylaw is too large, in my opinion. I think the 0.1 spaces per dwelling unit that's used in a number of other municipalities is entirely reasonable. And as I've been speaking to folks in the community about, with respect to parking, because I hear people's concerns about parking, parking is directly linked to affordability of units. So people are talking about the affordability of units that will become available in Oak Bay, and they're also talking about where people are going to park. Well, a parking space, if you have to excavate to create parking spaces in a multi-unit building, you're talking about $70,000 a parking spot. And it does cause increased cost to those housing units. So if we want to moderate and if we want to be reasonable about housing costs in Oak Bay in multi-unit buildings, we cannot be adding that cost. Parking is a direct impact to the affordability of units. So I am entirely in favor of providing for visitor parking. 0.1 spaces, in my view, is the correct ratio. So I will not support what's on the floor. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Are there other speakers? Councillor Patterson and then...
Yes, thank you. I will support it. I just would like to go back to what Councillor Appleton has said. I mean, point one might work if you have at least 10 units in a building. Doesn't work so well with 6 units in the building. So I think we need to have a formula that is realistic in working, which is why I'm supporting the amendment. And I think we talk affordability, but we also have to talk about accessibility and usability of the spaces. And if we don't have loading zones for accessibility, if we don't have visitor parking, there are a lot of services that cannot be obtained by community members. And so, it isn't just about lowering the cost, it is also about ensuring that members of the community are not left out of the equation. And so I will support it, because point one doesn't sound reasonable to me for smaller buildings. I think where point one is used, many of the buildings that are affected are 10 units plus, and it might make sense. But I think given the nature of the development in Oak Bay, it doesn't. And of course, I would like to have a further amendment, at least with what Councillor Braithwaite is proposing. It holds a unit that may help accessibility for people attending the building or being looked after in the building until we come to a different determination that has some merit to it, that actually would make sense for us, because I don't think having a 5 or 6 unit building with not a full parking stall makes sense to me. And then of course I would like to direct staff, I'd like to further amend to direct staff to bring back a recommendation for accessible parking standards as directed by the province.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. I will note, I think there's a percentage that tends to get rounded up to 1 unit. I don't think we're actually paint little lines of 2/3 of a car. So it's just, I'll speak briefly to Councillor Watson-Heavy, do you want to speak to the amendment? My apologies.
Yes, thank you. I will not be supporting the amendment. I think, again, we're having this tendency at the table to try and make policy decisions on the fly without sufficient information. And Councillor Patterson herself has noted that, the smaller buildings may be different requirements. I don't know. I also think that in just sticking with the motion as unamended, we have some clarity going forward. There's further work that needs to be done. I also think that with respect to parking within buildings, that parking is managed within the buildings too. I suppose if there's stratified units, that may be a little bit different, but certainly within rental buildings, there's opportunities, and even in condominium buildings, to manage things differently outside the requirements that have been imposed by the planning jurisdictions. So the immediate concern around accessible parking with the number, if it's 1 space per unit, it doesn't preclude that the space assigned to that unit being an accessible space, or there being modifications made within the parking arrangements to allow that space to be the first one on arrival, and with more access for opening doors and what have you. So I just think that it's not effective to try and address these for other needs, visitor, bicycle, and accessible parking, by making motions on the fly here tonight. I'd rather see that done as a concerted piece of policy work. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll speak briefly to the motion to amend. I'll speak in favor. I just have a slightly different take of what this is. I look at this motion that's on the floor as a motion to change the current zoning bylaw. And there's 2 aspects of that change. One is to take away all the visitor parking, and the second is to change it from 2 to 1. So to my reading of this, we have 2 pieces of change. And I do think that it's in many ways just reverting back to a slightly less change on that. I will say that I actually agree with the general comments that are made here. I actually think the 0.25 is the wrong number, probably in the long scheme of things. I look at other policies, they are much more nuanced. There's up to 1.5 spaces per unit, but then they can take away up to 0.3 spaces per unit, depending on the pieces. There's 0.5 to 1.5 spaces, but plus another 0.1. So you could have actually up to 1.55 spaces in Victoria, for example. There's nuance here in a more complicated parking schema that makes sense and probably is tied to very specific needs and demands. All of that is good work to do, but tonight, if we want to just advance something, I feel more comfortable with us matching the one, keeping the visitor parking, recognizing that is probably the wrong number, but I'd rather just, in my opinion, like make the minimal change possible, meet the requirements of this. And again, we've certainly had situations, the reason I say I think that 0.25 is too high. As you get into larger buildings, it would just end up with an excessive amount of visitor parking. That's probably not in the books right away. So I'm at this point, would rather just make sure we keep something in there, and then again, variance asks can happen very easily to say we just don't see the need for that visitor parking, and we can easily make that accommodation in the place. It's much harder to go the other way, and we have no tools if things are by right to say, by the way, we want you to have 1 or 2 visitor parking spaces, where we could say, okay, you don't need to have them all, but you do need to have one accessible one in the intervening time before you do the more sophisticated analysis. So I am supportive of the motion. I think it addresses the key aspects that we have in front of us, and it doesn't change on the fly, to my mind. It's essentially retaining what we have so we know what that is with the one change to the requirements. So I'm comfortable with that. Appreciate that some are not. So any other discussion on the motion to amend? Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And those opposed? I have Councillor Watson, Appleton, and Smart opposed. That amendment carries. That does direct this back to staff to make that change. Other amendments are in order here if people wish to make amendments to the bylaw. I will provide opportunity for motions arising if there's, say, a more elaborate or comprehensive change that wouldn't be included in this bylaw. I would consider that a motion arising. I'll welcome that. Councillor Smart, you indicated you might wish to make an amendment.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to make a motion to amend the bylaw to provide a requirement for secure bicycle spaces in line with neighboring municipalities.
Is there a seconder? Moved and seconded. Can I ask that you be specific about which neighboring municipalities? We don't have those policies in front of us.
Sure, I could suggest our neighbors, Victoria and Saanich. The wording is such to keep it open. As I suggested earlier, I'd be fine with something as simple as 1 per unit, but I feel like this wording would give staff a little bit more flexibility should they desire it. My reason for wanting to bring this forward now and not leave it for future work is that we have an undetermined timeline, as staff has suggested, to when we're actually going to get to these details. And now is the time when we're actually reducing the amount of space required for parking with cars to say, still keep some in the designs for your building for parking. There are a lot of ways that buildings are run, whether they be rental or condos, where often residents are not allowed to have bicycles in their suites. And if there is not a space actually in the building for them to put their bicycles, which can take up, as you can imagine, if you had a building of 60 units and you needed a place to park 60 bicycles, it's a significant amount of space that is required that needs to be designed early in the process. And what I foresee happening is that it might be 6 months or a year before we actually get around to this detailed work. And buildings are going to get designed potentially without this needed space. And you can't add space like that back in later easily. So I feel like this is going to prevent a lot of future problems by basically making it clear that this is something that should have happened years ago, still hasn't happened yet. And I feel like something now, it may not be perfect, is better than, this is one of those cases where, 80% is better than nothing. Thanks.
Councillor Appleton, you seconded?
Well, thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, it's really, really critical for this to be built into the design of new buildings. There are a significant variety of bicycles, e-bikes, and different forms of bicycle that are replacing cars as families' vehicles of choice. These are vehicles that families, seniors, wide demographic of people use to get around. And it's really important that they have proper facilities that are themselves accessible and easy to get at to be able to park those, to make sure that they're secure. There's, for some larger cargo bikes and e-bikes, they're a fairly significant investment. Again, they're a replacement for cars, and they're people's primary vehicles, so they deserve to have a secure place for them to be parked. And again, very difficult to retrofit in response. And if retention of parking in the building, parking for cars in a building is so significant, then we want to ensure that that does not have to be deleted in the future in favor of bike parking, or there's not a shuffle for space in a multi-unit building. So again, there are many families for whom a bicycle, a cargo bicycle, is a replacement for an automobile, and that's what they're going to be using to get around, and they deserve to have a space, a secure space for that vehicle that's support for their family. Thank you, Worship.
Thank you. Just, again, I'm going to just check in procedurally here to make sure I'm not off the mark, because I do recognize this motion essentially asks for a report back from staff about what other jurisdictions do and pieces, so we can have that information coming here. Just want to make sure that, okay, go ahead, Councillor Smart.
That is not my intention. I put forward this motion particularly as an amendment so that staff can just write it into the bylaw and come back for the next reading. I do not expect a report.
All right, I'll speak on my behalf at least on this. I think if you're asking for bylaw changes to reflect similar adjoining municipalities, I think we would need a report to kind of show us what those are so we can have that comparison in there. I don't think that could just be done. I'm just throwing that out there. I don't think it's a lot of work, but I just want to make sure procedurally I'm being careful here that we're not. I think it would require a report. Go ahead, Mr. Smart.
Through you, Mayor, could I ask staff if that would be the case, and if that's the case, I could revise my motion back to the providing one secure space per unit. Thank you.
Sure, I'll go to Mr. Bowl. If the motion is laid out currently, which is to ask for something in alignment with neighboring municipalities, if that would require a report back from staff.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, yes, I would recommend and suggest we would do that. We give you some backgrounds. We could prepare a draft bylaw with that report, so it's available to council right away. But it's a bit like some of the other recent reports where we took council direction, did a little bit of research, and came back to you with limited solutions, so to say, that are limited in scope and not the scope of a council priority project. Thank you.
So I'll go to the mover and seconder. It's up to you whether you wish to change the motion if you're comfortable with that. Councillor Smart.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mayor, to staff. Is there the capacity, should the report route be taken to still meet the timeline for these bylaws? Thank you.
It's a hard question to answer, but Mr. Boole?
Thank you, Mayor. I was under the understanding that changes were confirmed for this particular bylaw, and it would come back on its own merits, and these were motions arising. So, because it does require some time to do that research, and I would be hesitant to promise to include it in the current bylaw, because the current bylaw has a requirement from the minister for December 31st, and I think although I think we can probably follow up in the next couple of months on other requests from council, I can't commit at this point to do that right away, I think. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Boole. So over to you, Councillor Smart. What's your preference for addressing this?
Hearing that, I still hear that it would be an expedited process, so I will leave the motion as is. That will include a report.
Thank you. So the motion's on the floor. Anybody else wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Watson, and then Braithwaite, and then Patterson.
Thank you. Although I am a huge advocate of bikes, I don't support this right now. I think that this is a different piece of work, and that can be done in a rationalized and efficient way by looking at a bunch of different things at the same time. And I also think that this is an example of a situation where the market may very well adjust. We know that people are buying electric bikes and need places to store them. And developers coming in to develop multi-unit buildings are aware of that. So while the rationale for reducing the parking requirement is so obvious, the one for now imposing a bike parking requirement is not so obvious to me, because I think it may, although we need to look at this more carefully, I don't think it's as imperative as dropping, as meeting this provincial requirement with this really important reduction that's more in line with what actually the market is asking for. So we don't. I think that developers themselves will adjust in the interim, and that we should do the work that needs to be done when the time comes. And I don't think that's going to be 2 years from now, but it's going to be, sooner than that. But I don't want an accelerated piece of work just to address this, because there's too many other priorities that are getting missed. Will get missed, or we push them out again. So I'd like to be disciplined in sticking to our strategic priorities. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. I have Councillor Braithwaite and Patterson.
Thanks, Mayor. I would agree with Councillor Watson's comments, and I do look at a lot of buildings, especially in the Victoria area, and there's not one of them that has been built that does not include bicycle parking. So I think Councillor Watson's right. The developers do adjust that. So I will also be voting against it. Thank you.
Councillor Patterson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I too will be voting against it for reasons that already have been articulated here. I mean, this is again doing policy on the fly, which is not the best way to do it. I think that there will have to be refinements going forward if the market is demanding bicycle parking. I'm sure that we will hear about that from the developers. But the whole micromobility landscape is changing. It's not just bicycles, it's scooters, it's all kinds of devices, and some of them take up as much room as cars, certainly as much as Councillor Braithwaite's car takes up. So yeah, so I think that it is something that we do have to give some thoughtful consideration to, so I won't be supporting it as put forward.
Any other discussion before I call the question? First-time speakers go to Councillor Green and then Appleton.
Well, just very quickly, I won't be supporting the motion. I would be interested, though, to know what secure bicycle parking costs vis-a-vis an extra space for a car or a visitor space. So wherever you look, there is implicit cost. And so I agree with Councillor Watson that I think we don't want to do this on the fly. It would be worth looking at in a much closer way. Thank you.
Thank you. Second speaker, Councillor Appleton.
Thank you, Worship. Clearly the debate and the comments clearly reflect what type of vehicle Oak Bay seeks to prioritize, so that's been clearly signaled here. I will speak to what the market will drive. I find the comments about developers selecting facilities for their building interesting, because I will also note that there is a strong trend to developers saving costs on their buildings by foregoing parking completely. Our neighbors in Sydney have approved and have built buildings with no parking whatsoever. And the developers have discovered that they can make that work because they're putting people close to amenities and close to services such that they don't need a car at all. So speaking of market responses to different pressures, that can completely exclude cars as well as doing other things. So very disappointing that we would make a decision on the fly to add in visitor parking and have that be an offhand motion or a motion arising from this discussion, but then not consider bicycles, which is a significant mode of transportation for a huge number of people in the community, and have that be thought of as an afterthought. So very disappointing, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Appleton. I'd like if people speak if they're speaking in opposition. I'm not going to support the motion. I do appreciate where it's coming from. I do think it is a totally new policy. We have not established the rationale or that would drive the scale or scope or need for the bikes, whether that would be in shared spaces or requiring them in people's living spaces or any of those other kind of pieces that come with it. I think there's consideration for talking about it, but I think that what we have here is really, I think in my mind, intended to be a very simple update to the parking bylaw, not to set new policy, especially, and I do see this as pretty significant policy on the fly. I don't think it indicates inherent valuation of one form of transport over the other. We have a parking bylaw which is related to car parking, and I think that the minor changes that we're contemplating here, which is just changing from 2 to 1, which is the net result of the motion that's as it amended right now, is not substantially different in terms of policy. So I do think this is I think that's the simplest way to go, is to keep it in that line. That being said, I do look forward to a robust discussion in future about how we might tackle some of these other housing or parking questions for, again, multimodal transportation options. Thank you. So the motion on the floor right now is to make the amendment to include bicycle parking as a requirement. All those in favor of that amendment and those opposed, I have Councillor Patterson, Braithwaite, myself, Watson, and Green opposed. That motion fails. We're back to, actually no, at this point we have a motion to amend, which is passed. So that stands as it is, and it'll come back for second reading or third reading as adopted if this continues. Is there any other? Okay. So with that, we move to item 6. Sorry. Oh, sorry, Councillor.
Sorry,
Patterson.
I am motion arising, not speaking to the amendment, but a motion arising that council direct staff to bring forward options for accessible parking requirements based on the number of dwelling units in multi-unit residential developments.
Sorry, I'm just going to ask you to read that again before I seek a seconder.
Yes, thank you. That council directs staff to bring forward options for accessible parking requirements based on the number of dwelling units in multi-unit residential developments.
Thank you. I'm going to make a suggestion that we refer this to council priorities, because I think this is a conversation that we want to have, whether we just include this in the parking plan or if we want to have it as a separate piece. And it's best to have that in the context of that. That's my recommendation, but up to you as the mover as to whether or not you see that's appropriate.
I appreciate what the mayor is saying. My understanding of what the province has ordered is for us to do this in step with what we are planning for development. So staff may be able to speak more to that, but if we are in fact trying to follow the province's direction for everything else, and they have instructed that the municipality is responsible for setting this standard, I don't know if that must be completed by the December 30th date also, or if there's an extended period of time, and I can't speak to it. So.
Sure. I don't want to squish this or anything. I just, maybe just from a procedural piece, because just hearing the timelines that staff have already kind of referred to, I wonder if it might be a motion that asks for that clarification to come back. That might be an easier one, just to understand what our obligations are for that, so that we can make a decision about how much we prioritize it. That would just be a suggestion, just because you said if it's required, but we don't have that information yet. So maybe just.
So then I will, the motion arising would be to direct staff to bring forward time frame and options for accessible parking requirements to be developed for multi-unit residential developments and based on the number of dwelling units.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to suggest maybe just ask for a report on the obligations we have for accessibility in multi-unit buildings, but I'll leave your wording as it is. Is there a seconder? Moved and seconded. Thank you. Councillor Patterson.
I don't think I have to say anything more to motivate. The directions are by the province, and I certainly support the directives by the province to make accommodation for accessible parking.
Okay, I'm going to need to just read again, just so I'm clear on what the actual ask is.
Okay, to direct staff to bring forward options and time frame for accessible parking requirements based on the number of dwelling units, for multi-unit residential developments and based on the number of dwelling units.
Okay, thank you. I was asking this question of staff. This will go back for, if this goes forward, Mr. Bull, This is obviously, there's no timeline attached to this one, so if you, in your research, it was required by the end of the year, that report would come back quicker, I'm assuming, but if not, not necessarily. Is that how I'm reading that request? Mr. Boland?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, that's correct. I would need to review if there is a requirement for that or not, and then act accordingly. Thanks.
Okay. So moved and seconded. Any other discussion on that? Go ahead, Councillor Watson.
Thank you. I'm struggling with the motion. I totally understand the intent, but at this point in time, I don't even know what the provincial requirement is. And I am the chair of the Accessibility Advisory Committee. So I'm struggling with moving something forward that's so specific when I actually don't really understand the underlying policy requirement from the province. And I also think even framing it in terms of number of spaces per unit in a building, I don't know. I don't really know what would be appropriate. So I would prefer the mayor's suggestion, which is we just get a brief report from staff about what our obligation is first of all, and then decide how to deal with that. So I'm not comfortable with this very tightly specified work request as it's presented. I'm sorry.
Apologies accepted. Any other discussion on the motion? Go ahead, Councillor Smart.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, if possible, to the mover. I guess I'm just curious. This is a realm of work that is beyond what's required in the BC Building Code for buildings, or are you talking about outside of buildings?
Councillor Patterson.
Yeah, and it does go back to the accessibility legislation that the province has adopted and made recommendations on. It is also referenced many times with the in relationship to the transit-orientated areas. And so certainly all of that information is looped together, which is probably why I am reading it. But it did flow out of the accessibility directives by the government. Why it hasn't been instituted into building code yet, I don't know. And why the province is not providing guidance on it as they are for other forms of parking, I also can't answer, but that is the directive that each municipality will establish its own requirements.
Councillor Smart, anything else?
No, that's fine. I will be supporting the motion because I do acknowledge that there's been some change from what was previously included in the building code that has now become our municipal responsibility. And so I do think this is an important piece of work to get an update on in a timely manner. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Green?
I too will support the motion, but I would love to see it extended to street parking as well. I know they're separate issues, but I think we need to do a wider, broader analysis of what we need for accessible street parking in all the village centers in Oak Bay and elsewhere. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm going to speak in opposition to the motion. I totally support its intent. My personal take of this one, my suggestion on this one is it's borderline whether it's a motion arising from a building thing, but I'll accept it as a motion. If it fails, my suggestion with that, I'm happy to work with the mover, Councillor Patterson, just essentially asking for staff to just clarify what our obligations are, and then if we have the obligations, we understand what those are, then we can give some policy in terms of timeline. So I can't support it as it is. I know that we do have some obligations, but until we know what those are, I just don't feel comfortable making this a piece of work without that. So I can't support the motion as it's written, but I do support the intention of it, which is to bring that information forward. So with that, I'm going to turn to my fellow colleagues and see if there's any other hands. I don't see any, so I'm going to call the question. So the motion right now is a motion arising, directing that staff bring back that report. All those in favor and opposed, I have Councillor Watson and myself opposed. That carries. Any other motions arising? Okay, I'm going to move on then to items to section 7, which is new business. Is there any new business for members of council? Then notices of motions. I don't have any in my notices, but oh, we're getting there. I like the enthusiasm. Not looking around, I don't see any notice of motion, so I seek a motion to adjourn. Councillor Green? Is there a seconder? unsurprisingly, seconders. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Thank you very much, everybody, and that was a robust debate. Didn't expect that to... Since I didn't entirely expect it, I sort of thought this opened the door to lots of other options that could creep in, so...